Jeszcze nie. No siądź. Nie siądź tam. Już tu na razie. Nie siądź tam. Już tu na razie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and of course, good following morning. This is AMA number 62. It is May 28th, I believe. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Just turning off my feedback. It is May 28th, 2021. I am in New York City. Kasha and I are in New York City. Hi. Yes, Kasha saying hi. We are at the staying with our good friends at the lovely home of Cheryl Fishbein, former AMA guest, and Phil Shatton. So we are very, very excited to be in New York City. We are here for my nephew's bar mitzvah. I'm going to talk all about our travel plans and what New York City is like in a second. But also we have tell you that we have a guest today, excellent guest, someone who I've gotten to know over the years, who's really an impressive person with a really great story. Her name is Agnieszka Kocur-Smoleń. Now she works at the JCC, but really what I want to talk to her about is that for years, for over 14 or so years, she has been a guide at Auschwitz. So we're going to get really a talk, a behind the scenes talk, information about what it's like really, which I think is a fascinating, fascinating job to be a guide at Auschwitz-Birkenau. So we will find out about that. Good morning, Saul. Hello from New York. Is my guest a parrot? My guest is not a parrot. Why is my guest? Is there a parrot? Oh, I have no idea what's behind. Is there a parrot behind me? I have no idea. Anyway, good to see you, Saul. Welcome. Yeah, it's good to be back in New York. Good morning, Jeffrey. Stop by while I'm in the States. Actually, my plan is this. So we got into New York. Tomorrow is my nephew's bar mitzvah. And then we are here for a few days, and then we're going down to Boca Raton, to South Florida, to stay with the Rolats. Jeffrey, longtime fan. See, if you are a good fan of the AMA for a long time, then Kasha and I will come visit you in person. I don't know if that's much of an incentive to be an AMA guest, but there you go. So we're going to head down to Boca, spend a little time in Florida. We have some really exciting stuff lined up, some good meetings and some cool time to hang out. And then we will come back to New York and be here. Good morning, Marcel from Montreal. I was just talking, Marcel, with a rabbi who is the rabbi of an Orthodox rabbi from New York, who is from Montreal. His name is Rabbi Chaim Steinmetz, and he's the rabbi at Kehilat Yeshurun, which is a KJ here in New York, which is a very, very big, important synagogue. And I told him all about you, Marcel. Eva Rogala, hi, Eva, good morning. Sita, my dad is watching. Hello, Dad. Dad, this is something I don't often get to say on the AMA. Good morning, Dad, and I will see you tomorrow. So the main reason that we came in to New York this time, and the flight was okay. We flew Lufthansa through Munich. You have to have the COVID test. The flight was reasonably full, but not terrible, and we had our space to ourselves, which was okay. So we flew in for my nephew Elijah's bar mitzvah. This is the first in our family. I have a brother and a sister. They each have children. My sister has 2 kids and my brother has 1. And this is the oldest of that generation, the first one to have a bar mitzvah. So we're very excited. They live in Larchmont in Westchester, and Kasha and I are in New York. And tomorrow morning early, we're going to go up to Larchmont and celebrate the bar mitzvah, this amazing simcha with our family, which is great. My dad will be there. Unfortunately, my mom didn't make it. She almost made it to the bar mitzvah, but my mom will be there with us in spirit. And my dad is very excited. He's staying over in Larchmont tonight, and we'll all hang out tomorrow. And my sister is, as you know, because she's an AMA guest, is an epidemiologist, so she's very health conscious, didn't want to do something inside. So there's something planned for outside at their house, except it is going to rain. So I'm not sure how that's going to turn out, but I'm sure it'll be fine. And on a very exciting note, and you'll appreciate why, especially for Kasha, there is going to be a Ben & Jerry's ice cream truck at the bar mitzvah. So and Kasha and I had some influence over the flavors. So we're looking at a little bit of Netflix and chilled. We're looking at some chocolate fudge surprise. I don't know, different flavors that we'll have, which is very exciting to be able to pick the flavors. As we know, Kasia Leonardi, my wife, is an ice cream fanatic. We've already had ice cream since we've been here. Don't worry. Last night in the fridge already, which is really, our hosts are the best. Anita, which I feel is just about the best ice cream going these days in the world. The Tel Aviv ice cream Anita that has a branch on the Upper East Side. And we had some last night, and I'm sure we will be going there today. They also have frozen yogurt, which we haven't tried. So it's exciting. So bar mitzvah, then down to Jeffrey Rollat in Florida. I don't want to jinx it by saying it online, saying it now, but there's a very exciting meeting that I'll be recording, meeting with somebody in Florida and recording something for Ride for the Living, I hope. So if that goes well, then I will talk about it next week on the AMA. Next week, very special AMA. We're doing a special Ride for the Living as we kick off the Global Challenge. We are doing a big Ride for the Living AMA. We're going to have the founders of Ride for the Living and the director of Ride for the Living these days. So it's going to be me, Rabbi Avi, Robert Desmond, who rode his bike from London to Auschwitz, inspiring the ride. Justin Cadis, our good friend, who's been involved with the JCC for years, who's one of the co-founders of the ride. And I guess I said Rabbi Avi and me. So me, Avi, Justin, Robert, and Agnieszka Gish, our ride coordinator, amazing, amazing person who directs the ride these days and tells all the rest of us what to do with the ride. We're going to all be there and discuss the history of the ride itself, this year, running the ride, some backstage, behind the scenes aspect of our ride for the living. So that's going to be next week's AMA. Saul, how was Krakow, New York flight? Crowded, smooth? Yeah, it was okay, not terrible. Benji, forgot our special start time. Get with it, Benji. Ben Myers, my friend from Yotvata, Yofi Yonatan. Ben, I think for 62 AMAs in a row, has always typed Yofi Yonatan. Nothing more and nothing less. And I respect that, Ben. As we know, I am very OCD and I like consistency. So that's good, very good to see. I can report, Pani Zosha report. Our beloved Pani Zosha, the iconic elder statesman of JCC Krakow, had a back operation. Avi and I brought her to the hospital on Monday or Tuesday, I forget, and she is doing well. So I'm proud to say Pani Zosha did well, went through the operation, came out in flying colors, is in rehab. We're gonna bring her back to Krakow on Monday, and she'll be with us in no time. So for all of Pani Zosha's worldwide fans, she is doing well, and we're happy to welcome her back to the community. And she's resting now in Bielsko-Biała. So mentioned that Rabbi Avi and I drove her back. Rabbi Avi back in Krakow. Very, very exciting to have Rabbi Avi back. 14 months I hadn't seen Rabbi Avi, so really missed him. Very, as we know, not only a colleague of mine and our rabbi in Krakow, but a very, very close friend. So to be able to see Rabbi Avi is wonderful. I'll tell you, New York is great. Most people, a lot of people are vaccinated, people not really wearing masks. I have to say, my good friend, Vicky Warner, president of our board, who's one of the closest people to me in the world, along with Cheryl Fishbein, who we're staying with, people that are the closest people to me in the world. I was able to hug them after a long time. So that was really nice to see them already and to be able to hug. So I feel like the world is going in a good direction in terms of that. There's a good feeling. New York City, when we drove in, we haven't really been out, just out for breakfast, so not far away. But last night when we drove in about 7 o'clock at night and we drove up the west side coming in from Newark, so the taxi drove us up along up on the upper west side from Midtown up the west side, packed, tons of people out. Really, New York City looks like New York is back. So anybody who's been writing off New York and thinking, oh, no one's going to be in New York anymore and everyone's moving out. Nonsense. I really say never bet against New York City. Throughout history, all the time people bet against New York City, and it's never a smart thing to bet against. You can bet against the Knicks, you can bet against the Jets. Do not bet against New York City. There we go. Talk about this, the bar mitzvah. Let's see who's in. Good morning, Ryan. I was actually on a call in my masochistic sense last night. I landed at 6:45 New York time, which was 12:45 a.m. Krakow time. And at 10 p.m. New York time, I had already a Zoom call with the JCC in California that's participating in our bicycle ride. So that was 4 a.m. my time, and I thought it was going to be a few minutes. It was an hour-long call, and I was doing all right for the first half hour, and I really started to fade at a certain point, but I was happy to do it. I like to, as the team here knows in Krakow, I very, very rarely say no to anything. I love to do everything. And I feel like while I have the energy and the desire to do it, I want to do as much as possible. And I generally don't say no. So get off a plane, 4 in the morning, your time, total jet lag, do a live Zoom event. Why not? Helen. Hey, Helen, how are you? Helen Isaacson. How long am I here for? We're here until Monday evening. Then we go to Florida until more or less Saturday, Sunday next week. And then we're back till Wednesday. So we fly on the 9th. Helen, it would be great to see you. So if we can make it work, Kasha and I would love to see you and Joe D. So, and thank you for being on my Zoom. So yeah, it's great to be in New York. I have to tell you that my energy level goes up as soon as I get to New York City. I feel like it's just I'm a different person here in New York. And it's exciting to be here for the bar mitzvah, which is a huge thing. It's the first one in our family at that, for the next generation. So it's pretty exciting. There's been a lot of great developments with Holocaust Survivor Day, a lot of buzz about that. I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but I will say that we just found out in Israel that that for Holocaust Survivor Day this year, June 24th, there's going to be an event at Habima, which is the National Theater in Israel. They are inviting 900 Holocaust survivors to participate in this event. Well, they would be honored with different cabinet ministers from Israel speaking, becoming a huge event. But just imagine that for a second, you guys, 900 Holocaust survivors together in one room. I don't know the last time that happened. And I will tell you with reasonable certainty that I do not think, considering that they're aging and it's a rapidly shrinking population, unfortunately, but that's how the world works, that I don't know if you will ever again get 900 Holocaust survivors in one room together, which is happening in Israel on June 24th. And we are so proud to be a part of that. Not really, to be honest, not only a part of that, we are proud to be at JCC Krakow, the initiator of this incredible idea to honor our Holocaust survivors, Holocaust Survivor Day. The Jewish world is on board. I just saw an email. The Orthodox rabbis are involved, the conservative movement getting involved, Jewish community centers, the federations. We are all going to join together and honor these heroes among us, Holocaust survivors, on Holocaust Survivor Day. So very excited about that, and I'll keep mentioning that as we move forward. So lots going on at the JCC as the world reopens and the JCC starts to open up, and we have Ride for the Living coming up, Holocaust Survivor Day, just a lot going on, which is the way we like it. We like it busy, we like to do a lot, and we always want our reach to exceed our grasp. And with that, I will bring on my guest. She is a good friend, an amazing coworker. Her name is Agnieszka Kocur-Smoleń. She is a graduate of MA. She has an MA in Jewish Studies. She had a wonderful teacher who I believe she'll tell you inspired her whole path in Judaism, namely Jonathan Runstein. No, just kidding. She survived me as a terrible teacher, and she's been a guide at Auschwitz for 14 years. She's works with Yad Vashem and with the Holocaust Museum in Washington, the Polin Museum in Warsaw. There are a few guides that when you have a president of a country, super VIP delegation coming to Auschwitz, there are a few guides that get the call, and she is one of them. So I am proud to introduce our guest today, Agnieszka. We'll call her Aggie Kocur-Smoleń. I knew her when she was Aggie Kocur from the town of Szczecin, which is fascinating, right on the border between Poland and the Czech Republic. So we can hear about what's life like from the border town from Aggie Kocur. How are you, Aggie?
Hello, everyone. Hi, Jonathan. Big welcome to all of you, to you in New York and the ones watching us. I think that you know more about me than myself, so I'm really not shocked, but big grat to you that you got all this information about me. I'm very well today. Thank you.
You are part of a very, very small group of people. Very small. Actually, yes, very, very small. And maybe I can think of 2, maybe 3 of people who were my students and then work at the JCC where I'm the director. So you had to suffer me as a student and now are suffering me as a boss. So was I a worse teacher or a worse boss?
You were never a worse teacher, and I believe that you will never be a worse boss. So I keep my fingers crossed for you.
Very diplomatic, Aggie. Thank you for that. I'm not sure if that means I was a good teacher or a good boss or any of them, but I couldn't be worse at one. So there's different ways. That's a very Talmudic answer you've given us, Aggie. I appreciate that.
This is what I have taught at the JCC.
I think, to be honest, full disclosure, I think that I'm a better boss than I was a teacher.
I think that you were a very inspiring teacher. In fact, I was in some way preparing myself to this talk with you and with all our guests. And I really remember the time when during the studies, we came across with a group of students you taught, and we told you that we would like to take you on the March of the Living trip to Święcim, and that for you it was the first time when you could participate in the march. And I remember how it was emotionally heavy for you, and I really taught a lot from you on that day when we were at Auschwitz together.
I remember that day very, very well.
And it was a sunny day that day.
It was a beautiful, it was a fine, as Sophie Scholl said, and then it always sticks in my head. Sophie Scholl from the White Rose, which was the organization that was the Germans who rose against the Nazis, and the day that she was hung for rising up against for being against Hitler, what was it? I always say it and now I forgot it. It was a fine. It was like just called it like a fine sunny morning or something. And that always sticks in my head. There's some quote from Sophie Scholl. But anyway, Aggie, so since, this is always something interesting for people, and I know I always make people talk about it, and we did it with different guests, but you became interested in Jewish studies. You are not Jewish, or maybe you are and you haven't told us yet, which would be a cool time on the AMA to reveal it. But assuming that's the case, so as somebody not Jewish, how did you get interested? Maybe quickly, how you got interested in Jewish studies. I want to talk to you a little about that. I want to really focus mostly on your time in Auschwitz, because you working at the JCC is interesting, but really people don't hear so much behind the scenes from a guide at Auschwitz, especially with your perspective for such a long time and with your husband and all this that we'll talk about. But how did you get interested on the path of Jewish studies?
Okay, I did have two mentors in my life, which in some way helped me to choose this direction. Three, okay.
Three mentors.
Yeah, the priest from my parish, because I'm Catholic and I practice. And I was, I think, 14, 15, when our priest said that he's going to organize a trip for us to Krakow. And is not going to tell us what we are going to see, but it will be interesting. So if we are willing to go, let's do it. So I was among some of my colleagues and a group of young people from my village who decided to go on that trip. And I was really surprised that we didn't visit any churches in Krakow. But the first place we came to see was the old synagogue in Krakow. And that was my really first experience, my very first moments in life when I could in some way physically touch the Jewish heritage which is in Poland. And after the trip, when we could see all those Jewish places in Krakow, I started reading the books about the Jews in Poland, what was their history, what's left, what happens to them, and so on. And it was the first beginning. Then the next step I could make when I was about to finish my primary school and go to the high school when I was 15, and our history teacher took us to Auschwitz to visit the site as a class within the history lessons. And I remember that we did have a very good guide guiding us and telling the story out of Auschwitz. And the lady was also a kind of inspiration to me. And I put these two experiences together.
Mhm.
So 4 or 5 years later, when I was about to decide what to do in my life, I thought, okay, why not to study history and Jewish studies? Maybe there might be something good for me out of these two things.
You were a
So
very good, you were an excellent student, I will say.
thank
Aggie,
you.
that you were a great, it was a good year. You guys were a lot of fun, but you were an excellent student. And I want to touch on something interesting that you said. You know, we know very well, and you're working at the JCC, so you're so exposed to all of this, and with your work at Auschwitz, but especially I think these days that it's always fascinating for Jews to see non-Jews that are interested in Jewish subjects and Jewish things. And they always think that there's, because of the history with the Catholic Church, which of course is a very difficult history with Judaism, as we know, and really anti-Semitism throughout the ages, and even not too long ago. But you're interesting because people always, I think, often think that if you're sort of very Catholic or pretty involved, whatever the term, however we see it, then oh, that's not who would be involved Jewishly. Oh, that if you're interested in Jewish stuff, you're probably not that good. But you are a practicing Catholic and pretty, I would say pretty observant, pretty, I don't know, religious, but pretty much. Yeah, and that was one of the inspirations. It means a lot to me. Yes, and that was one of the inspirations for you, this priest and stuff, which is sort of not what people normally associate with the Catholic Church in Poland or anywhere.
That's true. Yeah, I know that, my case is very special, and I'm really proud of the fact that I've had a chance to get some help from my priest. And in fact, I remember when I was already studying the Jewish studies and I was preparing to my first Hebrew test, you did for us, I got my first Hebrew dictionary from my priest. So wow. So I think that I was really lucky to meet the right people in my life, and he was a very decent man. So I'm lucky.
So I mean, that's fascinating. So you had this guided. So let's move forward a little bit to Auschwitz. So you had this very moving visit there. You had a wonderful Auschwitz. You had a wonderful Auschwitz guide that inspired you, and then you study Jewish studies. You get a degree. You survive Jonathan Ornstein as a teacher. You of course don't then focus on Hebrew. Don't focus your life on Hebrew because obviously. And you become. What's the process like? Because I'm interested a little bit in sort of the behind the scenes. You go and you become a guide. 1 second, I just want to wait. I'm sorry for interrupting, but former AMA guest and my host and good close friend Cheryl Fishbein is saying goodbye.
Oh, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you, Cheryl.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. So we had Kasha AMA guest, Cheryl AMA guest. So how does it work? In other words, you decide after you finish, you have a degree in Jewish studies. You're interested. What's the process of becoming a guide at Auschwitz?
Mm-hmm. Okay, if you are thinking about getting a license, it's not a very easy thing, because when I was about to get it, when I was about to become a guide, it took more than 6 or 7 months to get to the final exams. Yeah. So of course you need to apply for it. There are a couple of meetings with the historians from Auschwitz Museum, from the historical center. Of course, there are also the meetings with people who work with the guides, who are responsible for the guides training. And then, of course, you need to be on a special training to first of all get the knowledge, understand what's the meaning of Auschwitz today, and practice and practice and practice, and just get to the point when you feel ready to start doing the work. Yeah.
And there's an exam. I know there's an exam which they're asking you sort of based on knowledge. Is that a written exam? Is it an oral exam?
Written, oral, and then the practical exam. So
do you have to guide? Do you have to go and take somebody around Auschwitz as part of your exam?
Yes. Let's say that it's a special commission of some historians and people who work in the Auschwitz Museum or have been working in the Auschwitz Museum for many years, who are specialists in the field of guidance. So you need to guide them, you need to take them around, and they just decide whether the way you do it is the right one. They like it or not. You need to improve or you need to correct something, and it's all about your decision whether you will get a license or not.
Was it difficult in the beginning to be essentially you're a guide in Auschwitz? So you've been there once, you go and obviously you visit Auschwitz, you go through training and all this. Was it when you started guiding groups? Was it difficult? It's not. I think it's not a regular job. You're working in an office. You're doing this. You are spending your time in Auschwitz-Birkenau. One of if we had to say what are the worst places on earth where there's been the most human suffering in one place, Auschwitz is pretty high up there on the list. So from the beginning, not where you are now, because obviously 14 years you've evolved with the way that you do it and the way that you deal with things emotionally. And I'm curious about from the beginning. So you're a new guide. It's 14 years ago. It's 2007. You're a new guide at Auschwitz. What is that like for you in the beginning?
Yeah, it's July. I remember it was July 17th. It was extremely hot. I took a train to get to Święcim. I didn't have my car at the time. I was really stressed out and I knew that I couldn't come late. So I had to get up very early in the morning to come to work and be there on time. Of course, it's impossible to say that it's not difficult to start working there. When you do something for the first time in your life, it's difficult. And you know that you are responsible for many people who are coming there and have certain expectations. And you know that the story you're going to tell is extremely important to many people. You know that to many people you are facing, this is probably the first and the only time when they experience physically Auschwitz. So all this you have to have here on your shoulders, and you have to combine this with your own emotions, with the facts, with the history you want to present. So I do remember that after the first group I had, then I decided to have 2 days off, just to get more energy and strength to take another group. And it was a long process. A lot of modifications must have been made to get to the point when I felt that what I do gives me a lot of satisfaction. What I do is something what I really believe in, and I feel that it belongs to me, that this is my story of Auschwitz. This is my interpretation of Auschwitz, how I want people to understand it.
And I know it's something that it's a difficult job, but I mean, I don't, I'd say, that you love it is probably the wrong term, using love in Auschwitz, but it's something I remember that when we were talking about you starting at the JCC, that one of the things was absolutely so important to you that you maintain your guiding at Auschwitz. It doesn't have to be all the time, here and there, but enough to maintain your certification there and stuff. And how important, what really struck me and what moved me was just how important that you understand the importance to the world of Auschwitz, and that you have enough self-awareness to understand that you're one of those people who's doing a good job telling the story. We know, listen, there are better guides, there are worse guides. Clearly you understand that you're good at what you do, and that's why, and you're appreciated for that, and that you have, part of your part in this Polish history or in world history is being one of the people to transmit that information. So I thought that was something meaningful to me, that you to some degree, you really, you can, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there's a certain love you have for the job, or a certain level of importance that you see yourself and enjoyment that you get from it, satisfaction.
Yeah, nicely said. Thank you very much. I do not know whether I'm, let's say, good enough to say, I'm good. No, I believe that I am a good guide. I believe that all the guides working in Auschwitz are really good, and I know that
that's not true.
I know that they do their best when they are there. And believe me, Jonathan, now after the hard lockdown, when people are almost, waiting just to be there and make, first steps on the side of Auschwitz, I know that it's really meaningful to them. And I know that it's strange what I'm going to say, but they missed the place a lot. And they missed the working there, being there, and being in some sort of relation with visitors who come.
Of course, it's not only about, in other words, it's not like you're walking up and down the rows of buildings in Auschwitz and Birkenau and seeing the crematoria, and that's it. So much of it is the interaction. You're interacting with people, and it happens, not happens to be, but that's you know, that's a main part of it. So I'm curious about how much of what you say is your own choice. Now, I know that if you get there, there's a group, there's nobody monitoring you, you can say whatever you want. But what I mean is you were taught how to guide, and over 14 years, that's obviously developed and changed. How much of that do you think is the original narrative that you were given and taught, and how much have you added yourself? And are you free to say anything? In other words, are there red lines? And I don't mean politically to get into things that are happening, but in other words, are there things that you can say whatever you want? You can talk about this and talk about that, but you're not allowed to say this. Is it completely up to you to say whatever you want?
I cannot say it in this way. We are always instructed and giving good advisory on what's important in the story of Auschwitz and what's important in the presentation of the story of Auschwitz. I think that it has to be in some way prepared towards the groups of visitors you're supposed to guide, because a different, maybe not a different story, in a different way you have to present the story of Auschwitz when you have a group of teenagers coming from Sweden or from Spain, and in a completely different way you do it when you have a family who lost someone from their family at Auschwitz, or in some way are personally connected to Auschwitz. I think that today we should follow the highlights of what's important in the story of Auschwitz. I mean, of course, we need to focus on facts. You just need to make people understand how Auschwitz was created, why it was created. You cannot take it out of the war context. But then, if you want to make visitors feel the place and be in a kind of relation with a living guide, with a living person standing in front of them like me, you need to add something personal into it. And I'm a big supporter of making sure that visitors, apart from the historical content, will also get that personal layer in the story which you deliver to them.
I'm curious.
So in my case, it must have changed a lot over those 14 years. I do even remember my first guiding, and when I compare it to what I'm doing right now, it's completely different.
I'm sure. I'm curious about the difference between guiding. You mentioned a group of Swedish high school students, but for example, the difference between guiding Jews and non-Jews. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that? Because I would think it's a very different, sometimes you're guiding people that don't know much about the Holocaust, and then you're guiding people who are, who lost family, or even if they didn't lose family, and maybe that's its own category. And I'm going to ask you also about guiding survivors. You've guided, I guess, everybody, after 14 years and doing what you've done, you've guided all different people. But I'm interested in, you have a non-Jewish family from the United States or a Jewish family from the United States or something. How is that different, not only in what you're presenting to them, but in how they're generally reacting to the information? I just think my question really is, emotionally, is it something, and to me, I would guess yes, but emotionally, is it so different for Jews to be guided at Auschwitz? And again, not somebody who's been there 20 times and they already have a little bit of distance, but how is that different? You're getting ready for work, you see, today you're guiding a group of Jews or a group of non-Jews. Is that, how are you looking at that differently? And what is generally, if that's different, how does that look?
Yeah, we always know what kind of group we are going to guide. Yeah, right. This is something very helpful.
And you need to, of course.
Yes, we need to know it. I think that the Jewish studies and the fact that I've been in some way exposed to Polish-Jewish history, Polish-Jewish relationships, and everything what is around it, helped me a lot over those years to get the right approach to Jewish and non-Jewish visitors. I mean, it's nothing special. You just need to ask yourself a question. Okay, this family, this group probably comes here for the first time, and you are there for them. And you need to keep your ears and eyes open all the time to see what the reactions will be like, or what the reactions are, what their expectations are, what their fear is, because many people know that it's going to be very emotional. It's going to be very hard for them. They don't know what to do, what to say, where to stand, whether it's okay to take pictures or not, and all these things. So you just really need to say to yourself that you are going to assist those people. You are not going to be a guide. You are there for them, and you really need to, look at your faces. And it's sometimes it's the matter of a couple of seconds. Sometimes it's the matter of proper words you're going to use. Sometimes it's just the welcoming you are doing, and it clicks like this. And I think that it's also a kind of a gift, which I think that the guide should have, to quickly decide, how to, in which way the narrative should go. And I believe that many of us have it. Many of us, of course, have to learn it. And it's one of the challenges for the guides.
I think so, and I'm interested in that because I think it helps to be empathetic. You're a very empathetic person, which is clearly helpful. And I think that I've been to many places in the world that I've been guided, and many places that I haven't been guided. And I would say if I'm going to walk around the streets of Lisbon, I see the advantage of a guide or not having a guide. But if I walk around Lisbon, I'm going to love this city because it's beautiful. I think the difference in having a good guide or not such a good guide in Auschwitz, or maybe even a guide that fits you, because you can be a great guide for non-Jews or a great guide for Jews and not, you know what I mean? I don't think that if you're a great guide, it could be that you do better with one group versus another. Could be. I think that the importance of having an important guide at such a place of such emotional depth and difficulty as Auschwitz is really important. And I say that because with our position at the JCC, that we're arranging a lot of groups going to Auschwitz, and we get a lot of feedback, and very often, and we're doing it for Jews, almost always for Jews, almost always. I think very often there's an idea that the guides, who are almost all Polish, if maybe there's one or two Jewish people working there, but not more than that, I think, if that many, is that they are, I think sometimes Jews get a feeling that the guides are apologists for Poland. And I think some of that is because they're coming in with a certain narrative that's not historically correct. In other words, people come to Poland, the Holocaust happened, so much of it in occupied Poland. They're not in Germany. They can't lash out angrily at the Germans because they're not around Germans. They're experiencing this thing that was caused by the Germans, but they're experiencing it in Poland. So they're sort of looking for certain things. But we've had many complaints over the years of how there's such a focus on the Polish aspect of the camp, and how can it be when, over 90, 1.1 of the 1.2 or whatever the number is of the, the exact numbers of the, overwhelming, over 90% of the people murdered there were Jews, and many of the others who were murdered there weren't necessarily Poles. They were, Roma, Gypsy, or LGBT, or, any of these other groups. So, but they feel that they're coming out of there with this idea of too much of a focus on the Polish narrative. And also, to be honest, you started working there in 2007. I went there for the first time, with you, 2004 or 5, whenever we went. 3. But, during communism, the camp was set up very, very differently, which is also something, this idea that the camp was almost ignored the Jews. It was like, oh, here's where the Yugoslavians were killed, and here's where these, forgetting to mention that all those groups that were almost done alphabetically in Auschwitz were Jews that were brought in from all over. So
yeah, that's why we always should keep politics away from memorial places.
It's hard to, but it's very hard. Politics touches everything. But I mean, so this is my thing is, how are you able to do that? Because you do a good job of doing that. How are you able to present the narrative and say, wait a minute, Poles weren't running this camp, Poles didn't build this camp, this was run by Germans, without really dealing with the sensitivity for especially American Jews or Jews that are not aware of that? Is that an issue? Do you find that that people are?
To me, it's not an issue. To me, to me, it's the matter of being honest to people I'm guiding. History is history. We know how Auschwitz started. We know where the concept of Auschwitz came from, where the concept of all other camps came from. So, when I'm standing in front of visitors and I'm ready to start the tour, many times I say to myself that, your role, your goal is to make them understand the mechanism of how, Auschwitz, happened, the mechanism which led to Auschwitz, and the language which led to Auschwitz. And to me, it's not a matter of rather Polish or Jewish or Roma perspective. There are different memories of Auschwitz, and each one of them is important. And I think that people should know each one of them.
Aggie, have you guided former prisoners?
I've had that honor to be with the groups who came to Auschwitz with the former prisoners and with the survivors, of course. And it did happen, I think, twice in my career, when I didn't know that there was a survivor in my group.
Yeah. The
group I was guiding, and it came out at the end of the tour that there were the survivors. And till this day I remember exactly those moments. So they also meant a lot to me.
And what about times that you've guided a survivor, an Auschwitz survivor, who you knew was an Auschwitz survivor, and then you were doing that? And maybe talk, if yes, what was that like?
Yeah, you always, first of all, when you know that there will be a survivor in your group, and you're supposed to present the story of Auschwitz to the group, you think how to do it, how to combine my understanding, my story of Auschwitz with the story of the survivors. So I always say to the groups that I'm just a storyteller, but the one who is going to guide us is a survivor. Mm-hmm. So I always invite survivors to do it with me together, because I think that we should work hand in hand. Of course, if they are willing, if they would like to share the story. And I never put any pressure on them, because I know that they just need to decide when is the right moment to openly say anything, interrupt me, and add something to my presentation. I've had this honor, I think, 6 or 7 times to guide the groups together with the survivors. One of them was Marcel Zieliński. I don't know whether Marcel is watching us right now. Yes. So hi, Marcel. I hope that you're fine, and Mariela too. And I remember that I've done it with Marcel when I was pregnant. So that was also something which I will never forget. To do the tours with the survivors when you're expecting your own child.
Yeah, I think, Aggie, for you, I guess really it's the same as, for any of us who've had the honor of going through Auschwitz with a survivor, and I have as well, with Bernard, with Marcel. It's something that, I think it's something very, very special. And it's something that down the road, 20, 30, 40 years from now, we'll think about that, and we will think how privileged we were to be able to touch these people and to be in this sort of living, these people who are a living bridge from a absolutely horrific past to to the world today, which for all its problems is a much better world, certainly for them, and I guess for all of us. Aggie, do you keep an emotional distance from it? How do you deal with it emotionally? You're somebody who's, you're not like me, a cold-hearted person, no heart, like as I am. You're somebody.
No, you aren't like this.
Quiet. You're somebody, how do you deal with it emotionally? I mean, I think, is it a challenge? Have you had to figure that out? Is it something that you put time in, or it's just, you're able to say, listen, I'm doing a job, it's in a difficult place, and you don't get caught up so much in it because you have a job to do, in the same way that if you're, driving a car, you're not so focused on everything else, you got to drive and you've got to make that happen. So how is it emotionally as an Auschwitz guide?
Okay, in the beginning, it was really hard. in the beginning, every tour, every story I presented, I took very personally. And I remember that it did happen a couple of times when I cried during the tours. I didn't want to do it, but it just happened. But then I realized that if I want to continue working like that and, you know, just keep doing a good work, I need to find some sort of balance and need to catch distance to the place, to the stories. And it took me, I think, 6 or 7 years,
Wow.
you know, to find my own way, how to care about myself, how to care about my emotions. And, you know, that was also the moment when I became a mom. So I could, you know, focus on, you know, different things than just only working at Auschwitz. But after 11 years, I got to the point when I realized that I need to do something else in my life. That if I want to still be a good guide at Auschwitz, I also need to have something else than just the guiding.
So now you get to talk about you get to work in a place of death and in a place of life. You have it's a good situation, Aggie.
It's a nice combination, I know.
It is. So tell me this, Aggie, because you're also in a very interesting situation. At home, you are married to a guide.
That's true. I've met my husband.
Are there any other couples there that are both guides? There are.
Yes, there are many.
Wow.
Yeah, so there are many. And, you know, we've been thinking within our team at the JCC that we need to write a book about couples who've met at Auschwitz as guides.
Yeah. Yes, no. So tell me, maybe let's talk just for a couple minutes about that. You know, I don't know, I guess there are husbands and wives that are lawyers and teachers and the rest of it and stuff, or partners, husbands and wives, whatever. But, you know, so you both work, let's say you have a day, you're both guiding. I mean, forget about Corona, but normal time, and maybe when you're more there, not at the JCC so much, but a few years ago, it's 3 years ago, you're both guiding, you're both very in-demand guides, and both of you are sort of like, you know, I want to say all-star guides. And I'm not saying it to be nice, this is just a fact. Both of you are, and I, you know, and I know that. So don't be false, no false humility, please. You come home, it's dinner time, it's 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, you have the kids, like how much the kids go to sleep or whatever. Are you discussing your days that much, or do you sort of not talk so much about work, or is it normal? You know, I know it's not just a job, obviously, for you, but I mean, in the way that you interact with your husband talking about Auschwitz, is something over the dinner table? Oh, I had this group today, it was terrible. Is it more normal, or more is it? Of course, right?
Of course, you know, I believe that you do the same with Kasia at home. You just discuss what happened to you over the whole day. No, it's good.
I guess there's always this idea that Auschwitz is so, you know, Auschwitz is Auschwitz. It's a unique place on earth. JCC Krakow is also a unique place on earth, but, you know, for very different reasons. So.
Yeah, but, you know, when you have two people who are really passionate about what they do, you cannot imagine the day without, you know, having this kind of discussions. Of course, they don't last long. And I can tell you that what saved us from getting crazy is the black humor about being a guide at Auschwitz. Yeah.
Yes, as we do, we talk all of us in Krakow and involved in Jewish Poland. You know, also have to do that. But what about the way that you guide? Because you're very different, both of you. And what about your guiding styles? In other words, will you say, "Oh, I thought of this today, and I talked about that," and then you'll tell Wojciech, and Wojciech will use that, and vice versa?
Mm-hmm.
Are you become better guides because each one of you, in the same way that if you're both school teachers and you come across a book, then you would tell the book, or you discover something? Are you sort of making each other better guides?
Yeah, I know I have learned a lot from my husband. And in fact, after 1 year of working as a guide, I was supposed to follow someone who was very experienced, just to see whether I should change something in my way of guiding. So this is how I met my husband, in fact. So yeah, it started from learning.
So he must have done a very good guy. Who was able to talk about this in Auschwitz? You did such a good job that you then fell in love with Wojciech. Wow.
Yeah, but you know, I can tell you that I focus more on personal stories when I'm doing the tour, and because I'm, as you said, I'm really emotional. People can feel it; they can see it.
Yeah, no,
Wojciech is more pragmatic in the guiding.
Yes, and I've had both, and someone like Pavel Savitsky, who's also a wonderful guide, who's, you know, at the very top as well, is also somebody I think very pragmatic. I've had a bunch of his tours, and he's not, he's adding, this and connecting it to the world today, but it's less emotion and much more matter of fact. And I guess Wojciech is more like that, and but I think it's just a reflection also of your personality. Is
maybe the fact that I'm a woman. It's also, I think it also comes from my experience as a mom.
Yeah.
Because believe me, the perspective is completely different when you're single, when you are married, and suddenly when you become a parent. Auschwitz means a completely different thing to you. Wojtek can show you the same.
Yeah.
But when
you're talking about the death of children, and then you have your own children and seeing them.
And you feel that you are responsible for making them understand the story when they will be old enough to get to the point when you can, introduce them to the story of Auschwitz, take them to Auschwitz.
How much do they know about the Holocaust? They know mommy and daddy work at Auschwitz.
Yeah. Our older, daughter, she's behind me, Asia. She already knows, I think, a lot about World War II. And we introduced her to the story of Auschwitz in the way which is, good for, someone who is 8 or 9. I think a year ago. They know that when we go to work at Auschwitz, they should stay with my mom and my mother-in-law, who lives in Oświęcim. They know that we go to the museum, that we do the tours, that we take people around. Mm-hmm. So that's the basic thing. But Asia and Liliana, both of them, they know a lot about my work at the JCC. And they know a lot about the Jews, that there were the Jews in Poland, that there are the Jews in Poland, and that there was the moment when a lot of them, how I say it to them, disappeared.
Right. Yeah.
And that, and my obligation, my responsibility is to make them understand why. That this is something important, which they need to remember about.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I'm sure if any kids are going to grow up knowing, getting the full story of Jewish life in Poland pre-war, the Holocaust, and now it's your daughters, with considering your work at Auschwitz and at the JCC, you are in a very prime, a unique position to do that. I want to talk a little bit about the camp, about Auschwitz, about the camps, but the museum itself, about Auschwitz-Birkenau. There's an idea of a complicated aspect of maintaining a place that was, that a lot of it, some of it had been blown up by the Germans before they left. Some of it, over 75, 80 years is falling apart. How much of it is original? How much of it has been reconstructed? And what is the balance between how to preserve things or just let them? I know there's a bit of a discussion about that. How much do you let something just fall down because that's nature? Or do you prop something up? Do you renovate? Do you keep things going? How does the museum deal with that? Because that's a huge issue, I would think.
Mm-hmm. It is, that's true. And I think that this is the question which the museum has been dealing with, and the challenge which the museum has been dealing with in last, I think, 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
That was Professor Władysław Bartoszewski, whose voice was to establish the Auschwitz-Birkenau Foundation. And as you know, the main goal of the foundation is to preserve the place for the future generations. And I think that that's the first thing the museum should do and would like to do for each one of us. If you want to know how much of the whole site is original, what is reconstructed, I think that this is the question, of course, which the experts from the museum should answer. Uh-huh. I always say that that between 16 to even 80, maybe 85% of what people see is from the time of the war.
60 to 85.
Yeah, I would say close to 85 than 60.
Yeah.
Of course, the exhibition which we show to visitors contains the original objects from the time of the camp. Of course, the exhibition is in the original buildings. Yeah. So it's even more than 85% of originality of the site. But over those 75 up to 80 years, there must have been some changes made there to maintain the site.
And also, I think the thing for people to understand is that Poland now is a democratic country that is behaving according to international norms in these things. And during communism, it wasn't free here, and the Soviet Union had its own narrative and wanted to preserve what it wanted to preserve. And to some degree, that however, that political element was so important, and that we're not only saying, oh, these days what is it can't just say what has Poland done to preserve. It's a question of what Poland during communism is one part, and then completely different situation now. So I feel like these days people tell me what Auschwitz was like before 1989, and from a Jewish perspective, I think it was absolutely it's something that was shameful and very, very difficult because it wasn't true. And there was no focus on, it was whitewash, not whitewashing, it was ignoring the Jewish aspect
the Jewish story
of Auschwitz, which the museum has done a great job. There's of course an international committee, advisory committee it's obviously the politics of memory these days in Poland is particularly complicated. I don't want to get into that, but there is on different levels, Jews and non-Jews working together to preserve the memory of Auschwitz. And I think that they do a very good job.
That's true.
I think also the fact that you have the block, is it block 26? Of Yad Vashem, 27, Yad Vashem, which to me is very powerful in the book with all the names. So they do a good job. Aggie, I'm just mindful of the time, and I don't want to keep you from your other work, building Jewish life in Krakow and doing.
Yeah, it's Shabbat time. We are getting closer to the Shabbat time. Not you, but we in Krakow.
No, I have plenty of time.
Still have the whole day.
So it's I think that it's great that you're able to do both, and I'm happy that you're able to find a good balance of staying at the museum and doing that important work. Not only just because it's important for you, but I think that your voice there, you're so needed there. And I wouldn't want to, as much as we need you in Krakow and doing your job, which is very important, directing the programming at the JCC, I'm happy that you're also able to do that just very important work of adding your voice and guiding people and making sure that people see Auschwitz in the right, not the right way, but in the way through your eyes, which is, I think, and you're adding so much to it. So thank you for juggling your life enough and caring enough about our mission to work with us and staying at Auschwitz. I know you're a very, very busy, hardworking person. That's impressive. So thank you, Aggie.
Thank you, Jonathan, that you're so patient, and that whenever I would like to do the tours, you always say
recorded.
Yes.
This is being recorded, Aggie. You've said that I'm patient.
You are, just like me.
We both know that's not exactly true. But Aggie, tell me, I have a few questions as we draw to an end. One is, are you Team Latka or Team Hamantash? And your answer isn't, I was going to say, your answer isn't going to be, you have to remind me to pick this year's people for Latka Hamantash. I'm working on it. You're Team Latka.
Yeah, I love Latka. I love Hamantash less than Latka.
Okay, you love them both. Very good. You're a politician. You're a born politician, Aggie. Aggie, 3 favorite films, non-Holocaust related.
Okay, I love Tom Hanks. So guess which ones are my favorite ones?
Okay, now I'm gonna say Big.
Philadelphia.
Oh, you like serious Tom Hanks? See, if you tell me Tom Hanks is in one of my favorite films of all times, Splash.
Okay. Forrest Gump, and I love Captain Phillips.
Captain Phillips. I said, okay, so real Tom Hanks fan. I would go, and I'm going to give you, not that you asked, I'm going to give you my 3 favorite Tom Hanks films.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Splash.
Okay.
I'm going to say Big.
Okay.
I like the comedies. And then I'm going to go I'm going to go in a different direction, and I'm going to say not a film, but a TV show that Tom Hanks was in the 1980s in the US, of course, called Bosom Buddies with Peter Scolari. They 2 guys, they didn't have much money, friends in New York, and they can't find a place to live, so they go to live in, there's a subsidized housing place for women, a hotel for women. So they pretend to be women, and they dress up as women, and they live in this place called the Susan B. Anthony Hotel, something like that, called Bosom Buddies, which was
I need to see it.
The first thing that Tom Hanks ever did. He's probably 20 years old, 22 in that, which is a great TV show from back in the day. So check that out.
Okay, thank you.
Agnieszka Kocur-Smoleń, my good friend, my guest. I'm so impressed by you, and thank you for being a wonderful Guy, thank you for doing that and for being a great director of programming at the JCC. And I will see you in 2 weeks back in Krakow.
See you in 2 weeks. Thank you very much. Greetings to all of you. Have a good Friday, no matter where you are, and good Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Thank you. Be well. Bye-bye.